Recognize our guest today as a longtime television journalist. Randall Pinkston has an impressive resume that includes CBS News and Al Jazeera America. And he's received high praise for his work, by the way of an Edward R. Murrow Award and 4 Emmys. Randall, hey, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Marshall. Thanks for inviting me.
I kind of wondered, since I'm interviewing one of the top television journalists, if I could get you to possibly draw...
Where's that person?
It is right there. It's on the teleprompter. Now, I was just wondering, maybe you could actually draw my cartoon this afternoon, if that'd be fair.
I don't think your subscribers would like that at all. You are a much better television interviewer than I am a cartoonist, trust me.
But I tell you what you are good at. You're a good teacher, and I got to watch you up at Ole Miss be an adjunct professor working with the students, and that's a new phase and a new wrinkle to your career. Are you enjoying that?
Yeah, I really am. This is my 4th year being an adjunct in their winter intersession. I teach media performance.
Yes.
I know a little bit about that.
A little bit.
And it's an interesting course and challenging because the objective is in 10 days. As you know, we teach 3 hours a day. You did the same thing with your marketing students, 3 hours a day for 10 days. And I tell them on day 1, whatever you're doing today, you'll be doing something differently on day 10.
Yeah.
Hopefully better, but definitely different. And so far, you know, for the 4th year, it seems to be working.
Well, I know, just walking across the parking lot with you talking about television, I think I learned more in TV in about 15 minutes than you did. You're a good teacher, but you've had a lot of experience. You had 33 years at CBS News, a little bit of time at Al Jazeera America, but you got your start here in Mississippi, just right down the road at WLBT.
Actually, at JDX-FM.
That's right.
Yeah, which was in the same building at the time. Back in those days, JDX-FM played hard rock.
Yeah.
Groups that existed probably before you were born, Marshall. Vanilla Fudge, Iron Butterfly, Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin, of course, is still around.
I've got their 8 tracks.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But, you know, you grew up in the same kind of house I did, where the radio was always on, the news was always on the forefront. You grew up around education. Even your Sunday school teacher, you know, made sure you had a dictionary.
Yeah, that was Mrs. Gooden, Mrs. Gustava Riga Mason Gooden. Don't call her Goodman. Her name is Gooden, G-O-O-D-E-N. And in our Sunday school at Mount Hill Missionary Baptist Church, we had to have our Sunday school booklet and a Bible and a dictionary. And when you read a passage from either of those, from the Bible or from your lesson, if you didn't pronounce the word correctly, you had to go to the dictionary. And I learned about diacritical marks. These days they call them phonics. But I learned about diacritical marks not in school, but in Sunday school from Mrs. Gooden.
So words were a big part of your life early on.
Well, you know, but not consciously.
Yeah.
I'd say what was more a part of my life that was a straight line to the career that I ended up working in was being a consumer of news.
Right.
My great-grandmother, my grand-aunt, mom, I was raised by my grand-aunt and my grand-uncle, my mom and dad. They all listened to the radio, and they read newspapers. And, you know, I like rock and roll, I like R&B, soul music, but I didn't control the radio. So I had to listen to Forrest Cox Farm Report and Morgan Beatty World News Roundup and Russ Ward in the morning and news throughout the day. So, and then later I delivered newspapers for the sister paper of your paper. It doesn't exist anymore, the Jackson Daily News.
That's right, Jimmy Ward was the editor.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, Covering the Crossroads with Jimmy Ward. Well, even at age 11, there were some things that I knew about not believing everything you read. But anyway, so I would read the front page of the newspaper every day as I would fold them. I had about 60, 70 customers at the height. And so for 4 years, I'm delivering papers, and every day I'm reading. I'm going home, I'm listening to the news. In school at that time, we had this little news paper called The Weekly Reader, and Junior Scholastic and Senior Scholastic. Those were, you were smiling. You know, you've heard about those.
We had them back in my day, too.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. I'm not that much younger than you, so.
So we were news consumers, and that I think is what prepared me, even though I didn't know I was going to be doing this, for for becoming a journalist.
You know, one of your last pieces for CBS News was on Medgar Evers and him getting on television, but him suing to get on television, WLBT, that totally kind of got your foot in the door, didn't it?
Actually, Medgar didn't.
Oh, he didn't sue.
No, he didn't sue.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
what he did, Medgar knew the law.
Yeah.
And he knew that the Federal Communications Act of 1934 required licensees to serve the entire community that their signal covered, called public interest, convenience, and necessity. And there were some rules, fairness doctrine, equal time, so that everybody had a chance to express their opinion or opposing opinions. Well, at that time, if you were black, you didn't have an opportunity to express any opinion unless the station wanted you to sing or something, you know, I mean, something, but not political.
It would be crime stories maybe, but not,
nothing political.
Right.
And so, so Medgar wrote to the stations and asked for some time to talk about what the NAACP was about, what the civil rights movement was about, and they rejected him. He started in the late 50s, like 56, 57. Wow. I talked to his daughter, who told me that her mom, Mrs. Evers, Mrs. Merle Evers Williams, did not know that Medgar had been writing those letters. Really? Because he was organizing NAACP chapters, he was trying to get parents to sign their kids up to desegregate schools, he's holding rallies, and he's involved with fundraising. He's doing a lot of things that were much more prominent and visible for Mrs. Evers than these letters he's writing to the FCC and to the stations. In any event, after about 6 years, one of the stations says, okay, you can do a speech. And he did that speech at WLBT on South Jefferson Street. The general manager at the time warned Medgar that the station might be attacked. Wow. Reportedly, they boarded up the windows, and they had Medgar come in the afternoon and recorded the speech. So when the speech aired, Mr. Evers and his family, they were at home. This was in May of '63. And it's believed that Byron D. Lay Beckwith saw that speech and hatched his plan. Wow. It is believed, and Mrs. Evers believes, that that is what made her husband even more of a marked man than he had been for all of the years he's going up and down the highways and byways and back roads of Mississippi on the cause of civil rights. And of course, we know 1 month after that speech, he was assassinated in his driveway. Eudora Welty, the great, wonderful, award-winning jewel of Mississippi, wrote an article for the New Yorker. Can't remember the title of it, but the article so closely paralleled what actually happened, the New Yorker made her change it. And the actual article, the one that she wrote originally, wasn't published until years, I mean, like around the 50th anniversary. And in that article, she talks about D.L. Beckwith driving north on Highway 4, well, what we called Delta Drive at the time. I think it's Medgar Evers Boulevard now, and turning onto Gines, and how he would see the lights of the buildings, and she just did the route, and how he lay in wait, and we know what happened to Mr. Evers, sadly and tragically. Yeah,
I do recommend people to go on YouTube and find your last report on that, because it's very, very powerful.
Yeah. But I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
You see, my daughter always accuses me, and right, she said, you know, Dad, I asked you a question, and all I need is a sentence, and you give me a whole chapter. So I apologize.
The good news is we have plenty of time for several chapters, so, you know, you give me chapters. We're good.
But to polish this off, the Medgar Evers story led, and the Medgar Evers tragedy, I think, was one of the reasons why WLBT had its license challenged. And because of that license challenge, they opened up an on-the-job training program for African Americans who lived in the community, and I was one of those selected. I wasn't the first. Right. There were many others before me, but I was in the first group, and that's how I got into the business of journalism.
You were literally led by a minister to the job.
Yes, Reverend Wendell P. Taylor. Well, let me give my dad credit.
Yeah.
So when I left high school, Lanier High School, great teachers.
1968, class of 68, right?
Class of 68. The Principal L.B. Buckley, love you much, and all of his staff there were wonderful. They prepared us. We went to the winds, as it were. I was accepted at 11 colleges coming out of Lanier.
Wow.
Okay, I'm going to brag. Dartmouth, Tufts, Amherst, Earlham, Columbia, Oklahoma Baptist, Morehouse, Howard, Tougaloo, Jackson State. I'm missing one. Can't remember what the other one was.
The one you went to, Wesleyan?
No, I went to Wesleyan. Oh,
Okay.
There you go. Yeah, Wesleyan.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Do I get a prize?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank
You
you.
get the prize. Thank you. So at Wesleyan, they had a radio station.
Yeah.
And it was an extracurricular kind of deal. You know, I had one show, 1 hour a day and 1 day a week. My friend Frank Benson and I went to school together there. We took pictures, little Polaroids, sent them home. So my dad, who was a custodian at Central Methodist Church's Head Start program, takes a picture to Reverend Taylor. My boy's up there in Connecticut on the radio station, you know. Anyway, so Dad, tragically, a few months later, he got lung cancer. He died. I came home, and Reverend Taylor asked me what was I going to do, and I said, well, I'm going to go to Millsaps and work at Standard Stationer's Office Supply Company. That's the job I got after delivering newspapers. And he said, well, why don't you go down to the TV station? They're looking for news trainees. And I really had no interest in becoming a news trainee. I had no interest in being a reporter. I wanted to be an attorney. And I said, well, Reverend Taylor, I don't know anything about the news. And he says, well, your daddy showed me this picture. I said, oh, that's just extracurricular. He said, you just go on down there and tell him I sent you. And that's what I did. And I tell young people today, when an older person tells you to do something and it's not going to hurt you,
Right.
try it out. If you don't like it, you can always leave, but at least give it a shot. And because I tried something that I really didn't think I wanted to do, here we are all these years later.
Yeah, you wanted to become a lawyer. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, okay, Randall, you want to become probably the 2 least popular careers in the world. I mean, was the IRS busy? Or
Well, that's a good one, Marshall. I didn't see the law as being a bad profession. I mean, for my generation, for African Americans, lawyers had opened the doors for so many opportunities.
Right.
It was a law that made it possible for the license to be challenged at Channel 3 that forced them to begin hiring and actually triggered the movement of diversity in stations around the country. Mississippi led the way. Mississippi had the very first African American general manager of a commercial TV station, William Dilday. You know, the brief time that I anchored the 6 o'clock news, I anchored the weekend 10 p.m. and then finally the 6.
which is the crown jewel of the newscast.
Of the newscast. The brief time I did it, we got the highest ratings. Now, what's interesting about that, this would have been 1974. The people who, the ARB and Nielsen, they used diaries.
Yeah.
And you had to write down what you were watching. There were precious few diaries, if any, in the homes of black Mississippians. So white Mississippians who had those diaries in their homes voted for this kid. Well, I was a kid at the time, not now, you know, with a lot of hair.
You did have some awesome
I
hair.
had a lot of hair back then. Now I've got a lot of face and a little hair. I kind of like balance it out. But that was Mississippi back then. And so as the years progressed and I would go to these big cities and they still had not had an anchor of color or not a black male, I'm thinking, well, why not? And they said, well, you know, the audience would accept it. I said, well, they accepted me when I was like just a pup, and give it a shot. You know, if the person is good, if people see you as being credible, trying to do a good job, trying to do an honest job, they will accept you. Mississippians accepted me, and I thank them for that, then and now.
But then Jacksonville accepted you, and then Hartford accepted
Yeah.
you. But Jacksonville was more of a quick stop for you. You were in Hartford for a while, but then you ended up at WCBS in New York.
Yeah.
So you got to cover some really big time stories at that point.
Yeah. In New York City, that was when a certain real estate magnate was making his mark with casinos in Atlantic City.
Yes, I think we'll hear a lot about him these days.
Yeah, and so I had a chance to interview him in his famous office tower once or twice as he was lobbying the New Jersey Gaming Commission for the right to to, I think he wanted, at one point, I think he had 3 casinos, but the crown jewel was, can't remember the name of it. We were there for the grand opening.
It probably had Trump in the name.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a fine, affair. We had to dress in formal attire, and yeah. Anyway, so that was one big story. I covered the senatorial race between Christine Todd Whitman and Bill Bradley.
Oh yeah.
Bill Bradley thought he was going to lose. And I'll never forget, he was in this train station in Newark. As people were coming off the train, he's saying, "Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. I'm running for the Senate. Please vote for me." And people were looking at him like, "Are you crazy? We know who you are." He says, "Yes, but please vote for me."
Wow.
Well, his internal polling had apparently shown Christy Todd Whitman coming really close. But what Christy Todd Whitman did not get was a visit from the president at the time, George H.W. Bush. And some people think that would have made the difference.
That would have tipped it.
That would have tipped it, because it was really close. And Bradley knew it was close. She didn't know how close it was. Anyway, yeah, a lot of political stories, unfortunately crime stories.
You told, I've seen you tell the story of a very heartbreaking story you had to cover on December 21st, 1988, when the Lockerbie 747, Pan Am 747 was brought down. And you were assigned to go to Kennedy to interview, or to at least talk to the families.
Yeah.
That was a tough time.
It was. When we left the building that night, we didn't know ourselves that everybody had perished aboard that plane.
Yeah.
By the time we got to JFK, it seemed to be the case that there were no survivors.
Yeah.
Relatives of the passengers, if they had not been listening to the radio, didn't know.
Wow.
They're arriving at the airport expecting.
Yeah, we didn't have Twitter, social media,
Right.
and all that at
Yeah.
that point.
They're
Right.
arriving at the airport expecting, the plane is going to land, or maybe it's going to be a little late. And then you hear screams and you hear shrieks as the agony of the realization of the loss. And my photographer and I did some interviews with people who were crying, who were obviously upset. People think reporters don't have hearts. We do.
Right.
I was upset just seeing the reaction and just thinking about, oh my goodness, what if it had been someone I knew? And a few years earlier, less than 2 years earlier actually, my grand-aunt mom, my mom who raised me, had died. And she was elderly, and she had been ill, and so you kind of expect an elderly person, but still the pain of loss doesn't leave you even when it's something that you know is coming.
Right.
And these people had no idea. And then there was this one moment where in the next, not a room, like a corridor area with a staircase, we saw this woman on the floor just crying, writhing in pain, and I told my photographer, let's not take that picture.
Right.
I tell young people that I made the wrong decision, that as a journalist, your obligation and your duty is to capture what's around you, to record it. The decision about whether to use it is up to your boss, your publisher, your editor, your executive producer. It's not yours.
Right.
You, by not taking a given image that you know is relevant to your story, you're self-censoring. It's
which is the worst kind of censorship in the world.
Yeah.
Trust me, even in what I do, it's
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
Right.
And I said, why did I do it? Because I knew that if I shot that image, even if I didn't put it in my story, it was going to show up somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want, if that was my mom or my aunt or whatever, I just wouldn't want our relatives to see that, and just remind her every time you see that, you're reminded of the pain. So my photographer said, yeah, well, I'm good with that, but what are we going to tell the news director when he sees it everywhere else? I said, well, we'll just tell him we weren't around here. We're going to lie, right? Well, thank God the news director didn't ask, so we didn't have to lie.
He now knows, though, because he just saw this.
Yeah. Well, he knows because he's seen my other speeches.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that the story we did was compelling with what we had, and it was enough, and you didn't have to go overboard with it. Other people used it. Other stations that saw that. It was an iconic image for weeks. So years later, I'm at a conference at University of North Carolina on trauma and how reporters handle covering trauma and how it impacts them. And I tell this story. And one of the journalists who was in attendance from Rochester, New York, I think, told me that at the time of the crash, she was in college, she was majoring in journalism, and that the woman on the floor was a mother of her best friend who had died on the plane. Wow. And when she saw the woman's image being played over and over and over again, she almost decided not to become a journalist because that was not a profession that she wanted to be associated with. She said, but today, I'm pleased to know that there was at least one journalist who made the kind of decision that I would like to think I would have made. And thank you for not taking that picture. And it was like, whoa. But I still did the wrong thing. Right. But for the right reasons. So,
but it just happened to be the right thing at that right moment.
Yeah.
Definitely on that. You've gotten to cover some incredible stories. I was thinking about you fumbling around in a cave in Afghanistan, and I'm very lucky that you're still here talking to me today. Talk about that. I mean, because Al-Qaeda had just been run out of the caves, and you're running around with a cigarette lighter.
So I was talking to my stepdad about this last night, and I said, have I ever told you this story? He says, no. And then I realized why I had told him, because my mother would always be in the same room, and so I had never shared this story. Okay, so Mom, so it's a long time ago, I'm fine, but here's what I did, stupid me. So we're at Tora Bora, and we've heard about these caves where there are trucks and planes and whatever that Osama bin Laden had stashed away. Finally, the day comes when we, journalists, are allowed access to the area where there are caves. And so I'm looking around, I don't see any big caves, but I see a lot of holes in mountains, right, little. And I'm trying to figure out which one do we go to. Now, here's the thing. My translator wasn't with us. My producer wasn't with us. I had a photographer, sound man, and a guide who understood English but did not speak English. He was a former Mujahideen, Afghan fighter working for CBS. So I see a guy coming out of a hole. I says, he went in, he came out. That's where we're going. So if you ever can find this story, I don't know if it's still on the web, the photographer and the sound man are here, I'm here, and my guide is in the background, and I'm walking towards the cave over here. Walking, it's like a backwards stand-up, sort of, like I'm walking away from the camera towards where we're going. What I didn't realize is that the Mujahideen, our guide, had been looking for landmines. So he's pointing out where he wants us to walk. And we're following his lead. Sure. And I'm thinking, well, I can see where there's a path, but he's like, you know, very definite. They walk here, walk here, walk here. I didn't even think about that. So we get to the cave, and I ask what's in it, and they say, but I didn't understand the Pashtun. So I tell my photographer and my sound man, okay, take a picture of me going into the cave. You guys wait out here. I get in, and the Afghan guide has this candle, and he's like beckoning me to come with him, and we walk down this narrow enclosure, and on the left-hand side there are canisters parked up like about 6 feet tall for about 20 feet down, and then about 5 feet over. We come back, he tells me to hold the candle. He takes one of the canisters, he opens it up. There's Russian writing on it, and it's 50 caliber shells. I'm in an ammo storage cave.
With a lighter.
With a candle and a cigarette lighter.
Yeah.
So, you know, once upon a time I thought I wanted to be an engineer, but I don't know a lot about science, but I know something about like things catching.
Yeah, you don't smoke in a fireworks stand.
There you go.
Exactly.
You know, so, and then the guy brings down another canister. It has Chinese writing on it. And I say, no, don't open, don't open.
Yeah, exactly.
One is enough.
Yeah, right, my heart can't take it.
So I turned to the little opening that I wear, and I said to my photographer, Sean, I said, Sean Bean, I think is his last name, British guy. I said, Sean, about the light. And so Sean, who is British, and he says something to the effect of, bloody flipping Randall, I know we need a flipping light.
Yeah.
I said, no, Sean, don't turn the light on. This is filled with ammunition. It's a storage. It says, oh, okay, well, you take the light, mate. And he passes the light to me, and then he passes the camera, and he comes in, and I put the light on the floor, turn it on, I raise it very slowly. I give it to my Afghan friend. I tell him to point it at me. I do 2 stand-ups. I take the light back, put it back on the floor, turn it off. And I left my sound man outside for 2 reasons.
You don't want to lose a good sound man.
And if something happened to us, somebody needed to tell the story.
Right.
Because our Pashtun guide who didn't speak English, it would be kind of hard for him to say what happened to us. So yeah, that was my experience in the cave of Tora Bora.
Well, as we wrap up, I will say this. Congratulations for your movie star role in Sully.
Well, 9 seconds.
9 seconds, but you were great.
Directed by Mr. Eastwood.
You nailed it.
Who called me back for a reshoot.
Yeah.
But wasn't my fault. He said, we shot you the first time at night, but want to see you in the day.
Because you covered it originally, but they
Yeah.
couldn't. It was easier to hire you to reenact the coverage than it was to get.
It was less expensive.
Okay. Yeah. Easier on the pocketbook.
Yeah, because all of the networks, they charge a lot of money for for their material.
Go figure.
And I was a lot cheaper than buying 30 seconds of video from CBS.
Well, thank you for taking the time with us. I've enjoyed this. I mean, we could go on for about 2 more hours on this, but.
You know what's really wonderful?
What's that?
There were no political questions.
Well,
Thank you, Marshall.
I do that with my cartoons.
Okay,
I
good.
mean, your life has been pretty cool, so I wanted to get that across. So.
Okay. It
But
has
anyway.
been wonderful. It's been a blessing. And thank you to all my teachers, to all of my ministers, to my parents, to my family, everybody who has played a role in helping me get to where I am today. I'm hoping that I made you at least a little proud.
I think you did.